Hello and welcome to our lecture on Chapter 8 on being an ethical counselor. Today we will be looking at the importance of being an ethical counselor. What does it actually mean to be an ethical counselor when it comes to career counseling? Um, and so the thing that's important for us to note is that um, regardless of whatever counseling we're engaged in, there is a tendency for ethical issues to come up. And especially in career counseling, this is because the boundaries between personal issues and a person's career concerns are very um, slim. Those boundaries are not very clearly differentiated. And also, most of the issues that you would find in personal counseling are also present when it comes to career counseling. And so it is incumbent on you as a professional to find out what the ethical codes are when it comes to providing services to individuals as they pertain to their career. This is because you want to be guided, this is because you want to be informed, and this is because you want to make sure that you're providing services in accordance with laid down procedures, and you don't want to do anything that's unethical. Ethical issues that pertain to career counseling were developed by the National Career Development Association, also called the NCDA, and these standards are designed to be very inclusive and focus on several boundary issues when it comes to working with clients with different needs and from different backgrounds. Um, the primary thing when it comes to the issues of boundaries when it as it pertains to career counseling is always to seek the interest of the client. When we engage the client right from the onset, we should try to make sure that whatever services or programs that we develop for the client are ultimately to the client's benefit. And so you as a professional should seek to deliver services in a professional manner that would help to facilitate the client's goals. And one of the fundamental issues as it relates to that is that of your competence. And when we talk about competence, we are talking about that in a holistic sense in terms of your professional qualification and in terms of your knowledge and your experience when it comes to providing services for clients. And the National Council for the NCDA encourages practitioners to first of all recognize your own limitations. What that means in essence is that you should know the scope of what you could do with a client in terms of what's your knowledge base and what are the services the clients need and what are those competencies that you have as a professional that would help you to facilitate those clients' needs. The second thing has to do with issues of boundaries and confidentiality. Confidentiality essentially deals with working with a client in a manner that protects the client's privacy. And the client's right to privacy is a key element in the counseling relationship. And so, whatever discussions or interventions or whatever private events that or consultations you would have with the client should not be relayed to a third party except that except you are legally required to do so. And the counseling relationship and information that results from it must remain confidential, consistent with the legal obligation that are imposed on you by the ethical standards. Counselors that work in school settings are even required to uphold these standards as they provide career-related services. Disclosure is only allowed when such disclosure is given to prevent clear and imminent danger. So let's say if a client was trying to engage in a behavior that could potentially harm themselves or another person, if whatever decisions they're taking clearly or intend to take clearly violates existing laws or could potentially cause some type of harm to some other person, that's when you are at liberty to make a disclosure. Other than that, you are not at liberty to make any disclosures. Another thing is informed consent. Informed consent involves disclosure by you of important information that relates to your qualification, that relates to the scope of the services that you will provide to the client, that relates to information that the client would need in making decisions as to whether they want to start counseling. You have to ensure that the client keeps their free consent to engage in counseling, in career counseling, without any form of coercion. In informed consent, you as a counselor has to inform the client of the purpose and of the goals and the procedures for engaging in a counseling relationship. This is important because just to like reiterate what I said earlier, clients have to voluntarily engage in counseling services, and they also have the right to disengage at any point in time that they feel like they do not want to continue receiving services. Another thing is with respect to boundaries of measurement and evaluation. Frequently, standard assessments are used, and we talked about this in one of our previous lectures. And so it is incumbent on you to be knowledgeable about whatever instruments that are being used. You want to ensure that the standardized tests that are used are those that you're familiar with and those that help to foster the career goals and objectives that the client has set up. There are some assessments that have a clear bias against individuals from certain backgrounds, and so if a client, for instance, has issues with learning or with reading and writing or from certain marginalized groups, it is important that you recognize such biases and such challenges that the client and the counselor has, the client has towards achieving their goals, and make sure that you take that into consideration. And most importantly, make sure that whatever instrument that or whatever evaluation that you're doing focuses on those areas that clearly address the client needs and goals as it pertains to career counseling. The NCDA has guidelines when it comes to using standardized instruments and tests. Same thing when it comes to the use of the internet. When it comes to the use of the internet, it is important that you, as the counselor, also involve the client in terms of making the necessary preparations and informing clients of the value of using such resources. When clients are involved in specific planning needs, such as maybe identification of occupational needs based on interests, skills, and experiences, or support for jobs seeking. We call that career planning. And career planning is different from career counseling because one has to do with the identification of the interests and the skills and experiences, and the other has to do with the addressing issues that are related to a person's career. So someone that's already has a job or is working and has some issues, maybe personal issues or issues that are related to the job that create some type of mental health challenges for them. Although these same services are part of career counseling, career planning itself is quite different from that, because career planning implies a more in-depth procedure in the counseling relationship. There are some suggestions that the NCDA has made, which is that you as a counselor may need to evaluate the websites that you use and other internet services to make sure that they have been prepared by professional career counselors. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of information on the internet, and most of these may not be relevant, may not provide information that could facilitate client goal, but it is important for you to make sure that you evaluate those information before you direct a client to seek out some type of career-related information, or to conduct a self-assessment, or seek out some type of resource from the internet. As a counselor, you are also required to have knowledge of free public access points where a person can go and access web resources, so the client can take advantage of online career-related services. And again, just to reiterate, make sure that you check the appropriateness of the content on the website before you may refer a client to use resources from the internet. Another thing is that counselors should screen the client's career counseling needs and determine if those needs can be addressed appropriately on the internet. If that's not the case, then face-to-face contact would be a better option. And if a referral is made for the client, or a suggestion is made for the client to use internet services, it is the responsibility of the counselor to monitor each client's progress periodically, and to again check out the credentials of such internet services, making sure that the information and services available, those services clearly address the client's needs. We talked about the psychometric properties of assessment instruments, things like the reliability and the validity. These are important. Clients may not be knowledgeable about assessment psychometric properties until you as a counselor has to ensure that these properties are there. For instance, if a test is administered on the internet, will the results of such a test be different from the one that's administered in paper form? So in printed form, will the outcomes be the same as they are on the internet? Make sure that ethical standards for administering and interpreting the printed form of the test are maintained, or consistent with those that are offered over the internet. Recognize also that assessment results are to be kept confidential and should only be shared with a party that's directly connected or involved to the provision of services for that client. Other than that, no, we have to maintain confidentiality in all cases, just like in regular counseling.